Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome to Congregation Emanu-El. I'm going to invite everyone here first to turn their mobile devices off. If you're in 3 dimensions, if I'm only in 2 dimensions, leave it on because you won't see us otherwise online. But so once you turn your phone off, if you'll turn to someone around you and please introduce yourself, wish them a Shabbat Shalom, and tell them one thing that you are looking forward to during this next 25 hours in Shabbat. Tonight it's a special Shabbat for us because later in the service we're going to invite Joy Sisisky, who is our interim director of the Jewish Federation, also a congregant and a friend, and just the other day was in Poland interacting with the refugees coming in from Ukraine, and is here to share her experience with us. So we're very lucky to have her with us this evening. But to bring us into Shabbat, I would like to invite up Ari and Ella's family to help light the Shabbat candles, which is kind of amazing because I remember when they used to run up during the little kid service, and were much smaller, but they're becoming B'nai Mitzvah tomorrow. And if you'd like to follow along, we are on page 12 with the candle lighting. Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom. And Mazal Tov in advance. We're continuing on page 20 with Lechadodi, where we are welcoming in the Sabbath bride as we shift. As we enter officially into Shabbat with lighting the candles, we now spiritually begin to raise ourselves up into this new time.
For those of you who were with us at our previous Shabbat that featured some Ukrainian Jewish music, I introduced you to, well, not in person, but I told you about Michael Urisman, who is a young dad living from Kyiv, who wrote a Lechadodi melody. We're going to sing his Lachadodi again. I do have a little bit more information than I did before. A month ago, all I said was, we don't really know where he is. We know he's trying to head west. Now we do know that he is hiding with his family in a small village. He was not able to go as far west as he wanted to because he explained that there would have been nowhere to sleep. He couldn't sleep on the street. So he's more in the middle of the country, and like so many people, he is hunkered down and just hoping that this madness ends soon. We sing this Lachadodi in solidarity with Michael and his family and everyone else who is suffering in Ukraine.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, ישמענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. אדוני לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, ובעורף קומי אורי, אורי אורי, שיר דברי כבוד אדונייך עלייך נגלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, פני שבת שבת נקבלה.
Please be seated. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They're full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no wrong. We have our Emanu-El students all over. We have Rabbi Jonathan right now with our 10th graders in New York City. And just this afternoon, we had our whole 6th grade here out on the sidewalk as they all headed up to Camp Newman. And I was talking with one of the parents, and she says to me, "Are we still wearing masks? Like, is COVID still a thing? Because I'm done with COVID. We've moved on to the war, or is it climate change?" And she was talking about how exhausted she was. And I think that part of what the rabbis do when they put this liturgy together is that we're not the first generation to reach another week and say, "Oy, it's a lot right now." And they put in here Shalom Aleichem, this idea that as we enter Shabbat, we don't really do it alone. We try to uplift ourselves, but we also sometimes need a little bit of help to raise us up a little bit higher. And so with Shalom Aleichem, there is the idea that angels come in and elevate us, make us sit up a little bit straighter and feel a little bit higher. And so I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and to really imagine yourself just being lifted just a little bit higher, a little bit more relaxed, and any of the stress that you're carrying with you from the week, the exhaustion of where we are in COVID or the war, or I could keep going, is that we're moving into a new time, and we're going to get carried into that new time.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech malachei hamalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu. Shalom,
Please rise and turn to page 28 for the Baruch.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vayeh. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam
Please join me on page 30. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the star in their heavenly choruses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tsevaot is your name, ever-living God. May you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evenings.
וכיום תמידים וגלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרבים.
Please join me on 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form?
Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto
Please be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך וכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Emet.
So much of the music that we celebrate as Jews in the United States is a direct result of the Jewish community of Ukraine. In 1922, a baby was born in New York City. They named him Elmer Bernstein. His mother was from Odessa. Elmer grew up to be one of the most celebrated film composers of all time. His career spanned many, many decades. And as a young man in his 30s, he scored a little film called The Ten Commandments. This morning, I sang my first Passover song at the preschool. It filled me with a lot of hope and joy. The Micha Mocha is a prayer about freedom. It's about freedom. So this Shabbat, we listen to Elmer Bernstein's composition of freedom. His instrumental, Micha Mocha, played on our almost 100-year-old Skinner pipe organ. We're on page 373.
We reach the point in our service where we say the Mishaberach, the blessing for those who are in need of healing, for their body, for their spirit, sometimes both, and sometimes only for one. As a community, we are praying for Frank Friedman, Rusty Holden, Hal Stein, Shirabat Shulamit, Vehalav Kalman, Judy Grossman, Lainey Tsena, Ellen Goldstone, Isabel Bloomking, Dina Adler Margalit, Michael Schaffer, Teresa Francisco, Burton R. Jackson, Michael Sims, Gregory Cole, and David Anderson. If there's someone else whose healing you are praying for, if you'll please share their name when my hand passes over you. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu, Avraham, Yitzhak v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, Hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and a complete renewal of spirit. And let us all say, Amen. Page 44.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, le'toretam b'rit olam. Sheshet Yamim Asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et hashabat la'asot et hashabat letoretam benit olam u'vayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, v'toretam benit olam.
Now we move into the very peak of our service as we step into the Amidah. And so I'm going to invite you, when you feel ready, to have the most personal conversation you can have with the divine, to please rise and turn to page 48.
Adonai Svatai Tiftach Adonai Svatai Tiftach Ufi
Mashiv haruach umorin hagashem mechalkel chayim bechesed mechaye hakol berachamim rabim סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך מביט ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל, אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please continue silently with the words on the page or with the words in your heart, and when you have finished, please be seated.
Lazar Weiner was born in Odessa. He was a musical prodigy, lived in Odessa until the age of 17, eventually immigrated to the United States, and is considered to be the foremost composer of Yiddish art music of the 20th century. I will share a translation of what I'm about to sing. Once upon a time, there was a poor man. All he did was quarrel with God. Wonders and wonders befell him when he sang a little tune like this. Chitty bim bum bum, chitty bim bum bum. From this tune flowed wine, and he swallowed gulp after gulp. Wonders and wonders befell him when he sang like this, chitty bim, chitty bum. As the Jew sang and sweetness flowed, he actually leapt for joy. Wonders and wonders befell him when he sang like this.
Diese Kapsen amol gewesen, fleckt nur mit Gott sich kriegen. Wunder über Wunder hat man ihm getroffen, wenn hat gesungen und zusammen nigen. Chiri bim bam bam, chiri biri bam bam, chiri bim bam bam, oi, chiri biri bim bam, chiri bim, chiri bim, chiri bim bim bam bam, ba 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 bam. Hat von Nigen sich Wein gegossen, hat wer Sub noch Sub geschlungen. Wunder über Wunder hat man ihn getroffen, wenn hat gesungen auf a Saminigen. Chiribim bam bam, chiribiri bam bam, chiribim bam bam, oi, chiribiri bim bam, chiribim, chiribim. Chitty bim bim bam bam ba 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 ba. Singt der Jidus Kid Messikes, is rasch von Fried gesprungen. Wunder über Wunder hat man ihn getroffen, wenn hat gesungen, hat sein Nigen. Chitty bim bam bam, chitty bitty bam bam, chitty bim bam bam, oh, chitty bitty bim bam, chitty bim, chitty bim. Chitty bim bim bam bam ba ba bam.
It is my honor to invite up Joy Sisisky.
Good Shabbos. I'm Joy Sisisky. I'm the interim CEO and the Chief Philanthropy Officer at the Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund. And today actually is my 6-year anniversary, not just of my job, but moving with my family to San Francisco. And it is an honor to be here, and I can't think of a better place to be than here. And I appreciate the invitation to come and speak about my trip to the Polish-Ukrainian border. But first, I'm going to go back in time a little bit. On December 6, 1987, when I was a little girl, my parents took me to Washington, D.C. on Freedom Sunday. It was the eve of a meeting between President Ronald Reagan and Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev. It remains one of the largest Jewish gatherings in U.S. history. Was anybody else there from here? The goal of the march was to pressure the Soviet Union to release so-called refuseniks, Jews who were prevented from emigrating to Israel or the United States. Everyone held signs that said, "Let my people go." The next year, when I turned 12, I had my bat mitzvah with Polina Yakolev, my refusenik twin. And 35 years later, and 3 weeks ago, I found myself in Medyka, Poland, at the border with Ukraine, and I couldn't stop thinking about Freedom Sunday. In my role as interim CEO, I was invited to join a small delegation of Jewish Federation leaders from across North America, along with our board chair, Arthur Slepian. We were there with our Federation's overseas partner, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, JDC. The Federation and JDC have been partners for over 100 years, providing critical welfare services to the world's most impoverished Jews, partnering in the renewal of Jewish life and there to rescue Jews in need. JDC is the manifestation of our Federation on the ground in more than 70 countries. Over the years, we have provided tens of millions of dollars to help them carry out our shared work in building global Jewish peoplehood. And it was this historic partnership that made it possible for the Bay Area Jewish community to respond immediately to the needs on the ground in Ukraine. We are there for the Ukrainian Jewish community today because we were there yesterday and we were there 30 years ago. This infrastructure is largely supported through funding from the Jewish Federation system, including ours here. It's one of the greatest achievements of the past century of Jewish communal life. You can't build a firehouse in the middle of a fire, and that's what I learned when I was in Poland. My trip was a particular kind of volunteer service. We were there to bear witness to the atrocities of war and to welcome refugees at the Polish-Ukrainian border with compassion and love, to accept their testimony with a promise to share it back with our communities, including with you here tonight. The trip started in Warsaw. I stayed at a hotel across the street from the central train station, where I saw thousands of people who were pouring in by bus and train every hour. I had never seen anything like it before in my life. And most extraordinary, less than a half a mile away, is the Warsaw Ghetto and the Umschlagplatz. This was the central collecting place where more than 250,000 Jews were sent on trains to certain death at Treblinka only 80 years before that. Today, you must suspend disbelief to accept that a train to Poland will save your life, including if you are a Jew. From Warsaw, we made our way to Lublin and then to the largest border crossing in Poland at Medyka. And I want to share two stories with you tonight from Anna and Frederick in their own words. Anna, a young mother from the eastern part of Ukraine, told me about her herring escape with her two children. She said, "For days, we just didn't believe it. One day we woke up and we read that the nuclear power plant nearby would be targeted. My husband told me, 'You have 15 minutes. Take what you need. Just save our children. Go, go, go.' I took some documents and the clothes on me, my children, and left. They boarded a train car meant for 4 people, squeezing in 18 others, including 7 mothers and 11 children, not a single man. They stood up the entire ride, not sleeping or moving, for 19 hours. And when they finally arrived at the border, they waited in line again overnight with no end in sight. Anna's young son, who was only 6 years old, fainted. He hadn't eaten, he hadn't slept. When we met her at a hotel in Warsaw, where the Israeli embassy had set up a temporary consulate in the ballroom. She was waiting to make Aliyah with thousands of other people who were there. Frederick is a Nazi victim and a survivor. He's from Kharkov in the eastern part of the country, where he was a professor at the university for 50 years. He did not want to leave Ukraine, but his daughter insisted, and they joined an evacuation transport organized by the Jewish community. Days later, Frederick arrived in Poland, crying, wearing slippers as if he was going to go home at any minute. We met at the Chachmei Yeshiva in Lublin. It was once the world's largest yeshiva, which had been converted into a hotel and was serving as a transit center for mostly Jewish refugees. Lublin, of course, is also home to Majdanek, one of the largest concentration camps during World War II. Many survivors like Frederick are reliving a second trauma during this war. And he said to me, "We could not have left without you. Thank you." On average, most people we spoke with had just 30 minutes to decide if they would make a run for it. I watched thousands of people stream in by foot, some who had been walking for miles or days with just a single suitcase, a purse, a plastic bag filled with the contents of their lives. Many of them came with pets. They had dogs and cats and birds. And for the most part, it was all women and children, because if you're a man between the ages of 18 and 65, you can't leave unless you have 3 or more children. We did see some men who were crossing into the border. They brought their families to the other side to safety, and we watched them turn around and walk right back into Ukraine to fight for their families. I saw families ripped apart before my very eyes. These refugees are all being well taken care of, but they're all in trouble. The psychological trauma is immense, and in the more obvious forms, we saw people who were crying, not eating, refusing to speak, while others were determined to share their stories. They want you to know the depths of evil in which they are living. Myself, I lived in Dnepropetrovsk, Ukraine, and worked in the Jewish community for a long time many years ago as a JDC fellow. And my own family was from that same town. They left 101 years ago this year. And I bet I'm not the only one here tonight that has family roots in the countries of the former Soviet Union. If not for a left turn or a right turn, this decision or that decision, it could have been me. It could have been us, and I think about that all the time. More than 200,000 Jews live in Ukraine, and the vast majority of them are still there. We learned this week that only 10% have fled. Many more are internally displaced or refugees in their own country, including some 40,000 elderly and at-risk families. Many of the elderly are homebound, they're bedridden, and they rely on care through the Federation and JDC's home care network, which continues to provide uninterrupted services with our support. People have asked me, how was your trip? And I never really know what to say because the truth is, it was horrible. I hope this is something that you never have to see in your lifetime, and I wish that I could unsee it. As a mother myself, my daughter, Emmy, is here with me tonight. The hardest thing to accept and watch was the complete devastation of an entire generation of young children. More than half of all of the refugees, more than 2.5 million of them, are children under the age of 18. And there on the ground, I understood the magnitude of this when I realized that no matter where I was, at the train station, at a tent camp, at the border, at a transit center, not a single baby or child was crying. And in fact, when I was at the border in Medica, as families crossed from Ukraine to Poland, I was surrounded by tens of thousands of people, and you could hear a pin drop. The depth of the trauma that we saw was stunning and overwhelming. This week's Torah portion is Tazria, a parsha about the work of the priests to care for the most vulnerable and sick. We may not have priests anymore, but we, I think you and I, share the same burdens of the priests who worked as healers. The scars of leprosy then are the burns of war today. Anna, her children, her husband, Frederick, and dozens of other refugee families that we met bear the scars and are in need of healing. We are called upon in this moment by God to bring wholeness to those in our community and beyond who suffer the most. It is our responsibility and privilege to help those who need healing on their road to recovery. Today is day 37 of the war, and the needs continue to be urgent, and they are as dire as they were on the first day. The Federation is in the business of saving lives. In fact, I think we were built for moments like this. Our fellow Jews need us. They need food, they need clothes, they need medical attention, transportation for evacuation, daycare for the children, and counseling services. There are still 9 members of the Jewish community in Ukraine who are ages 105 or older, and they're unable to evacuate. The fact that we know this is a testament to our work on the ground because every Jew counts and every Jew matters. And of course, it's much more than that. Someone on the trip asked the chief rabbi of Poland, Michael Shudrick, who we were traveling with, when someone crosses the border, how do you know that they're Jewish? And he said, you don't, you just help them. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? This is the time to respond. The San Francisco Jewish Federation has mobilized $3.6 million for the crisis in Ukraine, including more than $2.2 million for our emergency fund, which is going straight to JDC, 100% of it. Combined with the more than 150 other Jewish federations across North America, we've raised more than $40 million. And when you make a gift to the Federation, you leverage yours with 1,300 other families in the Bay Area as a sign of solidarity and strength from here to Ukraine. I've been touched by several gifts in particular. The first one came from a 7-year-old girl who donated her life savings of $9, and a $500,000 gift from the Alexandra and June Mason Foundation. Mr. Mason was a survivor who arrived in San Francisco via Shanghai after the war. He worked his way up as a longshoresman with a desire to give back, to always be on the right side of justice. And still, it's not enough. So if you have made a gift, thank you. If you haven't, I'm asking you to do that today. I hope that you'll meet the call to action today and when we ask again, because we'll need to ask again. The aftershocks of this war, whenever it ends, including for the Jewish community, will be with us for years to come. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned the Russian Jewish community, which has twice as many Jews living there, twice as many vulnerable people. We're on the brink of a secondary crisis with some 200 families who've already fled to neighboring countries like Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan because they can get there with just a tourist visa. I'm going to conclude with just some reflections about the end of my trip, which coincided with Purim. It's my favorite holiday, and I spent it at the airport waiting for my connecting flight back to San Francisco. Though it wasn't very joyous, it gave me plenty of time to think about the takeaways of what I had just witnessed, stories from the Megillah, the Freedom Sunday March from my childhood, and 5 lessons stood out to me. The Jewish community is stronger together. Sometimes we are called upon to take the lead in action. Never lose hope, be prepared to make sacrifices, and most importantly, embrace your destiny. For me, my work at the Federation and as a Jewish communal professional for more than 20 years is more than a job, it's a calling. The Freedom March in 1987 set the tone for where I needed to be to fulfill my mission in life today as a healer. As Mordechai said to Esther, perhaps it is for precisely this moment that you have been placed in your position. I think each of us can ask ourselves this same question. Is this a moment that life has been preparing us for, an opportunity to make a difference? I invite you to join me in the pursuit to make our world whole again. The Federation was built for moments like this, and we need you. This is our moment, and so much is at stake, because if not now, when? Thank you again for including me, and I just want to say I loved that beautiful music that you've been playing. It's been very special, especially having lived in Ukraine. It brought back just a lot of wonderful memories for me, so thank you.
Joy, thank you very much. And it's fitting that your name is Joy, because when we think about Purim, when we think about the month that we're in, Adar, that it really is about joy, but it's strange that it's mixed in with such a dark story of the book of Esther. And it is really about how you react to those moments and times. You can't control your environment, but you can control how you react to your environment, and our community is blessed to have your leadership at this moment in time.
The musician Alexander Olshanetsky was born in Odessa. He wrote his composition, Mein Städtle Bells, My Village of Bells, as an homage to the nostalgia of the old country. And I can't help but think of the millions of people who have been ripped from their homes. So we sing Mein Städtle Bells for all of them.
Bells, oi, bells, oi, bells, oi, bells, oi, bells, mein Städtle bells, mein Himmel, wo ich hab meine kindische Juden verbracht. Oi, seid ihr einmal gewinnen? Oi, boi, 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 boi. Oi, boi, 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 boi. In ormen Stiebel mit alle kinderlich dort gelacht. Jeden Schabbes pfleg ich Leuten dort mit der Trine gleich. Zu sitzen unter dem grünen Bäumele, Läden bei dem Teich in Bild, mein städtere Bild, mein Himmel Buch gehabt, die schöne Chaläumes.
We rise and turn to page 282 for the Elenu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתקן ולייצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו אכול המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ויון ההוא ויון ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. We reach the point in our service where we remember those who came before us. And as a community, we remember those who were murdered in Israel in this past week from terrorist attacks. Amir Khoury, an Arab Israeli, 32 years old. Rabbi Avishai Yichzekel, 29 years old. Rabbi Yaakov Shalom, 36 years old. Dmitry Mitrik, a Ukrainian citizen of 31 years old. Victor Sukfot, a Ukrainian citizen of 23 years old. Shirel Abikart, of 19 years old. Vivian Falach, a Druze, 19 years old. Laura Yitzchak, a 43-year-old. Rabbi Moshe Karbitsky, 50 years old. Dorit Yachbus, 49 years old. And Menachem Yeskel, 67 years old. We remember those who have passed away in our community in the past 30 days. Francisco del Castilla Espinoza, Bernard Nusinau, Jerry Hirschman, Henry Berger, Murray Schneider, Ruth Roll Schuller, Asia Ogamonlik, Elisa Lynn Kaufman-Rubel, Geraldine Hirschman, Norman Burr, Madeline Albright, Don Kahn, Robin Owen Bushby Wood, and John Zorling. We remember those whose yahrzeit, whose anniversary of their passing is on this Shabbat. Maureen Axelbaum, Bonnie Bayan, Joseph Blumlein, Shirley Stenau Surf, Rachamim Davidoff, Arthur Eckhouse, Sam Fleischman, Hermine Fleischman, Jacob Fried, Marvid Friedman, Edward Green, Milton S. Hahn, Harry Hartman, Irving Hausman, Phyllis Hausman, Marion Herstein, Ruth Kaufman, Leon Kraft, Stanley Lent, Willard Livingston, William J. Lowenberg, Emmy Lowenberg, Tanya Madfis, Zerna Madfis, Jacob Magid, Elaine Magnin, Manuel Messer, Paul Milstein, Jeanette Nathan, Fabia Ann Phillips, Masood Yaakov Ben Asher Rastagar, Neville Rich, Joseph Evan Rosenbaum, Madeline Haas Russell, David Salvin, Irv Schatz, Rose Schmelzer, Eve Siegel, Samuel M. Shoah, David Sloan, Esther Berkowitz Spiro, Marjorie Stone, Kyle Hardy Strang, Steffi Tick, Sol Volin, Elizabeth Waldman, Eva Wellner, Rachel Pollock Warman, Merton Yallis, and Eric Zorling. If there's someone else who you are remembering who passed away either in the last week, the last 30 days, the last year, or this is the yahrzeit, the anniversary of their passing, if you'll please share their name when my hand passes over you. And as a community, we rise and we turn to page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yotev v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agalah u'vizman kari v'imru amen, yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'elam omei omaya, yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran b'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. My honor to invite up Ari and Ella to lead us in the Friday night Kiddush. And if you are following along, we are on page 123.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, ve'ratzav ba'anu, ve'shabbat kodsho, ve'ahava u'ratzon imhilanu. Zikaron lema'aseh bereshit, ki hu yom tehillah lemikra'e kodesh, zeher etziga Mitzrayim. Kivanu v'harta, v'tanu kitashta, mikol hamim. Shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinahaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh החיים. But very convincing argument.
I try. So, as we come to a close, we will be singing Adon Olam. And Adon Olam, if you look at the words, it is almost putting oneself over to the divine, saying that there's actually a lot in this world I cannot control, but I just kind of let go and I realize that I will be elevated and everything will be okay. And that's why it's traditional to oftentimes put Adon Olam at the end of the service. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to take those words, and there's
Page 321.
and one of our traditions, just like you've seen that with the Beatles, of course, that was from Sinai. But as we change music throughout the year, it's really to evoke emotion inside that word structure. And so our word structure is Adon Olam, but the tune will be the national anthem to Ukraine, to remind us that even in these dark times that we will be lifted up and we will get to that place of peace that Joy talks about, that God willing, it's tomorrow. It may be a little bit longer, but we will get there.
Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'nasa v'chetzo kol hazai melech shemo nikra v'acharei kiklot hakol
And as we conclude with the Motzi, I'm going to invite everybody after the Motzi to please take your prayer books back and put them back on the cart to give our staff a little bit of Shabbat as well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbos, 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 Shabbos. Soll sein, Shabbos. ba 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 be me bam 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 ya ba 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 ya Sholem 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 soll sein Sholem 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 soll sein ja ba 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 be me bam 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 ya ba 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 bam ya ba 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 be me bam 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 ya ba 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 bam Shabbat 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 soll sein Shabbat 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 soll sein ja ba 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 be me bam 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 ja ba 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 bam ja ba 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 be me bam 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 ja ba 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 bam
Thank you, everyone. That was lovely. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Joe.